Everyone said my brother was the golden child until he got fired and spiraled. Instead of helping him, my parents turned on me. You pushed him too hard, Ethan. You made him feel like a failure. Me, the quiet kid who never asked for praise. I spent years shrinking myself to protect his ego. But the moment they blamed me for his downfall, I realized it was time to stop playing small and show them exactly who I really am. Growing up, I was the kind of kid who always followed the rules. I loved books, math puzzles, and anything that made sense. While other kids played outside, I'd be building websites in the school library. Teachers called me gifted. Classmates called me weird. But I didn't care. I had a goal: get into MIT, change the world through tech. The problem was, I had an older brother. Lucas was everything I wasn't. Charismatic, loud, the life of the party. He was the kind of guy who walked into a room and owned it. Football captain, homecoming king. My parents were obsessed with him. Every trophy he brought home went straight on to the living room shelf. Every report card, no matter how average, got celebrated like a Nobel Prize. When I got a perfect score on the SAT, they barely looked up. Good job, Ethan. Now go help your brother with his resume. Lucas had just flunked out of community college, again. But that was the pattern. He'd mess up, and I'd get called in to fix it. Rewrite his cover letters. Tutor him in algebra. Lie to employers on his behalf. And every time they said the same thing, be a good brother. Lucas needs support. It wasn't just exhausting. It was suffocating. I started hiding my successes just to keep the peace. When I got into MIT, I didn't even tell them at first. I waited until the financial aid letter came in and said I wouldn't need them to co-sign anything. Only then did I bring it up at dinner. Their reaction? Oh, that's nice. Oh, but Lucas just got a job interview. I should have been proud of him. Instead, I felt invisible. At college, I finally breathed. I dove headfirst into machine learning, robotics, and natural language processing. I worked 18-hour days in labs and side hustled as a freelance developer. By junior year, I had built an AI-based scheduling app that started gaining traction. It wasn't perfect, but it solved a real problem for students organizing chaotic class loads and social commitments in one place. And for the first time, I wasn't building something for them. I was building it for me. Still, every holiday break, I went home and walked straight back into the shadow. Lucas would sit at the table, complaining about how his boss didn't understand him. My parents nodded sympathetically. When I mentioned my project or a research award, the topic changed in seconds. I tried not to take it personally. I thought maybe they just didn't understand tech. But deep down, I knew the truth. They didn't want me to shine if Lucas couldn't. The breaking point came 6 months after I graduated. Lucas got fired from a decent-paying job, his 4th in 2 years. He came home drunk one night and smashed the front porch light. My parents were shaken, but somehow I became the problem. You know, Ethan, my dad said you've always made him feel like he's not good enough. I blinked. What, you? Push too hard, my mom added. You're always achieving, always showing off. Showing off, I hadn't even told them that I just pitched my app to an angel investor and gotten accepted into a startup accelerator. I'd been staying quiet, playing small, tiptoeing around my own success. But none of it mattered. In their eyes, My ambition was cruelty. My hard work was arrogance. My existence was a threat to their favorite son's ego. That night, I stared at the ceiling in my childhood bedroom, thinking, what if I stopped trying to earn their approval? What if I just walked away? I had the skills. I had the product. I had a team of developers I met at MIT who believed in me. Maybe it was time I believed in myself too. I didn't leave in anger. I left in silence. I packed a single suitcase, my laptop, and a whiteboard full of messy diagrams and code. When my parents asked where I was going, I just said, out. They didn't even press me. It was as if my absence made things easier. I moved into a cramped one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a leaky faucet splitting rent with two other startup founders. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. We turned the living room into a war room, wires everywhere, post-it notes covering the walls, energy drink cans piling up by the hour. For the first time, I felt free. But my family wasn't done with me yet. Lucas started calling late at night, slurring his words. Sometimes he'd beg for help rewriting his resume. Other times, he'd just rant about how everyone thinks you're better than me. I tried to be kind. I really did. But every call ended with guilt. Don't forget where you came from, Ethan. My mom texted one day after I declined to help Lucas prep for an interview. Then my dad chimed in. You're too good for us now, huh? I ignored it. I buried myself in work. My app, now called CourseSync, was getting traction. We landed a pilot program with 3 universities and feedback was glowing. Even some early buzz on Twitter, tech blogs, Reddit. Then one day I saw it. Lucas had posted on Facebook. Must be nice to have everything handed to you while others struggle. Some people just step on their family to get ahead. It got dozens of likes. A few comments from old neighbors saying, "That's sad, Lucas. You deserve better." I was stunned. Handed to me. I'd worked every summer since I was 15, paid my own tuition, built everything from scratch. Meanwhile, he'd coasted on charm and second chances. Still, I didn't clap back. I didn't reply. But something inside me cracked. I started pulling back from my family. No more Sunday calls, no updates. I even blocked Lucas on social media. And for a while, things got better. Our beta test was a success. We were weeks away from pitching to a major VC firm. The future was finally opening up. Then my mom showed up at my apartment. I was in the middle of debugging a server crash when the buzzer rang. She looked smaller than I remembered, tired, anxious. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded and let her in, even though I didn't want to. She sat on the edge of the couch, eyes scanning the room like she didn't know where she was. "Lucas got arrested last night," she said. I froze. "He got into a fight at a bar. They're holding him for assault. Bail's $5,000. I blinked, and then the silence turned heavy. "We don't have that kind of money right now," she continued. "Your father's hours got cut." She didn't say it outright, but the implication hung in the air like smoke. They wanted me to fix it, again. I leaned against the wall, heart pounding. She looked up at me with teary eyes. "Please, Ethan, he's your brother." And I said something I never thought I'd say. "I'm not responsible for him anymore." Her face broke. "You used to care." "I still do," I said, "but I'm done being the safety net." Her voice turned sharp. "What happened to you?" I laughed, bitter and short. I stopped shrinking myself to make everyone else comfortable. She left without saying another word. I stood there in the silence, knowing I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. A week later, Lucas was released on his own recognizance, and a few days after that, my name started circulating online. Not for the app, not for the tech, but because Lucas had posted a thread accusing me of abandoning our family for profit. He shared old photos, personal texts, half-truths twisted into blame. At first I panicked, but then something strange happened. The tech community, especially the people who knew my work, came to my defense. Investors, developers, even former professors commented, "I know Ethan. He built everything on his own. People like him don't step on others, they lift people up." Suddenly, the narrative wasn't about me hurting Lucas. It was about a young developer trying to build something real in spite of family trauma. And for the first time in my life, people saw me not as the shadow of someone else, but as who I really was. After the online drama faded, I thought things would settle, but it was only the beginning. The pitch day was approaching. We were prepping for our biggest presentation yet, a chance to secure a $2 million seed round from one of Silicon Valley's most respected VC firms. This wasn't just about funding. It was validation. It was the moment we'd dreamed of since sketching CoreSync on a napkin at a campus cafe. But then 2 days before the pitch, I got an email. Subject urgent, potential PR concern. It was from the VC's communications advisor. Attached was a thread from a small but persistent tech gossip blog. Apparently, someone had anonymously submitted a tip suggesting I had been abusive toward a sibling with mental health issues and had used family funds to launch CoreSync. All lies. But it was enough to raise eyebrows. The blog post ended with, "We urge investors to investigate the ethical standing of this young founder before offering support." I knew immediately who was behind it. Lucas. I called him. He didn't pick up. But 5 minutes later, he texted me, "You don't get to erase me, Ethan. I'm your brother." I stared at the screen, blood boiling. Erase him. He was trying to sabotage everything I built. He couldn't stand that I'd finally broken free. And now, he wanted to pull me back into the mud. The team noticed I was off that day. I didn't want to bring drama into the room, but I owed them honesty. So I told them. I told them about my brother, the manipulation, the blog post, the lies he'd weaponized to drag me down. To my surprise, they didn't back away. My co-founder Priya said, "Good, let them come. You've got truth on your side." But the damage had already started. The VC firm postponed our meeting. "We want to give this time to clear their email," said. "We're still interested, but we have to be careful with reputation risk." That phrase, reputation risk, sat like poison in my chest. It wasn't just about Lucas. It was about years of guilt of being the quiet one, the fix-it kid, the one who never rocked the boat. And now, I was being punished for finally saying no. So I made a choice. I wrote a blog post. Title, "The Cost of Shrinking Yourself for Family." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a hit piece. It was the truth. I talked about growing up in a house where achievement wasn't celebrated unless it came from someone else. I talked about how I'd bent myself into knots to protect a brother who never wanted saving. How I built something from nothing, and how that wasn't enough because I didn't play small. I ended the post with one line. If success feels like betrayal, maybe the betrayal was baked into the silence we were raised in. It went viral. Not celebrity gossip viral, but LinkedIn viral. Tech Twitter startup founders, first-gen college kids, child prodigies who'd grown up with resentful siblings They shared it like wildfire. And then something even more unexpected happened. The VC firm called back. "We've read your post. We're ready to move forward on one condition," the partner said. I braced myself. "We want you to lean into this. Don't run from your story. Own it. Make it your edge." I was stunned. They weren't just tolerating my past, they wanted me to use it. The next day we pitched, and we nailed it. We walked out with a signed term sheet and more than just money. We had momentum. But the moment I posted the funding news, my mom called. "No congratulations. No, I'm proud of you." Just one sentence. "You didn't have to embarrass us like that." Embarrass? I'd shared my truth. With no names, no accusations. But that's the thing about narcissists. They think everything's about them. I told her calmly, "I didn't write it for you or empower you. I wrote it for me." She hung up, and I cried. Not because I felt guilty, but because I realized something deep. I would never get their approval. Not really. No amount of success would fill that hole. I had to stop chasing something they were incapable of giving. So I stopped calling. I stopped explaining. I stopped performing. And I focused on building. CoreSync exploded. Universities signed on. We hired our first full-time team. We were featured in Forbes's 30 Under 30 in Education Tech. And then one morning, I got the email that made me sit down. Subject: potential acquisition. Interest. It was from Google. They wanted to meet. I didn't tell anyone at first. Not my friends, not my co-founders, definitely not my family. The meeting was surreal. Sleek boardroom, smiling execs, questions about scalability, integration, IP, and then the final offer came through $18.7 million. I stared at the number like it was in another language. It wasn't just money, it was freedom, it was proof. I called my team together. We talked, debated, cried, laughed, and we said yes. The acquisition made headlines. My name hit TechCrunch, Business Insider, Fast Company. And that's when they called again. Not Lucas, my parents. Suddenly, they were so proud. Suddenly, I was always destined for greatness. Suddenly, Lucas never meant to hurt me. I kept the call short, polite, distant. I didn't know them more. But part of me still hoped, maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see me. Then came the final blow. They invited me home for dinner, said they wanted to celebrate. I agreed cautiously. Maybe this would be closure. I walked in wearing a simple sweater and jeans. Lucas was already there, smug as ever. He gave me a side hug and said, "Big shot now, huh?" I ignored it. Dinner was awkward but civil, until dessert. My dad raised his glass. To Ethan, he said, "For proving we raised you right." My blood went cold. They wanted credit. After all the gaslighting, blame, and silence, they wanted credit. I stood. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "You didn't raise me to be this. I became this despite everything." Then I turned to Lucas. "And I'm done letting your failures define my worth." I walked out before anyone could reply. And in that moment, with the cold air hitting my face and my chest rising and falling like a tide breaking free, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid, building websites in a quiet school library. Peace. Not the kind that comes from being liked, the kind that comes from being whole. A few months after I walked out of that dinner, I got an invitation. It was from my old university. They were hosting a major tech symposium, industry leaders, researchers, investors, and wanted me as the keynote speaker. The theme, resilience innovation, and the power of personal narrative. Fitting right. They also asked if they could feature a documentary-style profile of my journey. Apparently, a journalism student had been following my story online and pitched it as her capstone project. I agreed on one condition. I wanted full approval over what was shown. They sent me a rough cut. It was powerful interviews with former professors, teammates, even Priya. But what hit me hardest was the ending, a montage of my early days. Footage of a shy kid in a hoodie typing code in the campus library. A single quote flashing on screen. I'm not here to be someone's second chance. I'm here to be the first version of myself. I asked them to keep it in. The night of the event, I stood backstage watching people fill the auditorium. The room held nearly 1,000 people, every seat full. As I walked on stage, applause erupted. But in the third row, I noticed something that made my heart stop for a beat. My parents, and next to them Lucas. They weren't invited. Someone must have forwarded them the public link. I almost stumbled on my first line, but I caught myself. I told myself, they don't own your story anymore. You do. So I told it, not with bitterness, not with blame, but with clarity. I talked about what it means to shrink yourself to make others comfortable, to feel guilt for doing well, to be told your success is someone else's failure. And then I said, some people only cheer for you once the world does. But the people who matter, they cheer when no one's watching. The crowd went still. Then came the standing ovation. After the speech, I stepped off stage and ran straight into Lucas. He smiled like nothing had happened. You were amazing up there, he said. Really, you made the whole family proud. Family. That word rang hollow. I looked him dead in the eye. You didn't make me proud, Lucas. Not once. You sabotaged me, lied about me, tried to ruin what I built. He blinked, caught off guard. I was struggling, he mumbled. You wouldn't understand. You've always had it so easy. Easy. I laughed once, bitterly. You mean the part where I stayed up until 4 a.m. every night writing code while you partied? Or when I had to apologize for being too perfect so you didn't feel bad? Or when I lost funding because you planted lies in blogs? He opened his mouth to defend himself. I held up a hand. I don't need you to admit anything. I just want you to know I see you now. And I don't need your approval. I don't need your guilt. I don't need anything from you. Then I turned to my parents. They looked small, like the authority they once had over me had deflated. My mom reached out. Ethan, we just want to make things right. We didn't realize how much pain we caused. I stared at her. For a moment, I saw the woman who used to tuck me in at night, but also the woman who said I embarrassed her by telling the truth. I believe you didn't realize, I said, but that doesn't make it okay. My dad cleared his throat. You've changed. No, I said. I just stopped hiding who I am. They looked away. That was all I needed. Later that night, at the gala dinner, the university president surprised me. They were creating a new innovation scholarship in my name. The Ethan Ward Resilience Grant. Full tuition for low-income first-gen students in STEM. Funded partially by CourseInc, matched by alumni donations. I stood up to accept the honor. And this time, I invited someone on stage. Priya. She had been there since day one. through the noise, through the setbacks, through every betrayal. When I handed her the mic, she said, "Behind every founder who survives, there's someone who believed when no one else did." Ethan believed in me, and I believed in him. I looked out at the crowd, at the students, at my team, and yes, at my family. And I finally said what I had been waiting to say for years. I'm not a replacement for someone else's failure. I'm not a cautionary tale or a guilty reminder. I'm not who you told me to make yourselves feel better. I'm who I've always been. I just finally stopped apologizing for it. That was my karma. Not revenge in fire and fury, but in becoming untouchable, unapologetic, undeniable. A few weeks after the gala, I got an email. It was from a high school senior in Nebraska. She wrote, "I saw your speech. I'm the only girl in my computer science class. My brother told me I'd never make it. But now, I believe I will." That's when it hit me. This was never just about me. It was about every kid who was told to be quiet, to shrink, to not outshine, to apologize for being more. My journey, my success, it wasn't revenge. It was liberation. Lucas faded into the background. My parents stopped trying to reach out after a while. And honestly, that was okay. Some relationships aren't meant to be repaired. They're meant to be released. What stayed? My team, my mission, the students we funded, and the future we were building. A future where no one had to dim their light to make others feel warm. I stood on the rooftop of our new headquarters one morning watching the sunrise over the city skyline. Priya handed me a coffee and smiled. "No more hiding," she said. I smiled back. No more guilt, because in the end, I didn't need them to believe in me. I just needed to believe in myself. And now I finally did, completely.